Hello, YouTube and Facebook. It's Jen T. Grace here, founder and CEO of Publish Your Purpose, and we're here for day six of the Publish Your Purpose Author Lab workshop, and I'm hoping that you had a wonderful weekend. We took a couple of days off between our 5 days last week and our 3 days this week. So that is what is going on. It is a Monday afternoon here on the East Coast. So if you are here and you are tuning in and you are watching, please post in the comments. Let me know who you are, where you're coming in from, what you're working on, all of that fun stuff. And as usual, we will wait about 5 minutes-ish past the hour to actually get into the content, just because it takes a couple minutes for both YouTube and Facebook to let you know that I'm live. So I want to just give 5 minutes of flexibility for the technology, who is not always a fan of mine. So who do we have here? I definitely see some numbers popping in from both YouTube and Facebook. Let me know who you are. You know, who's here? What do we got going on today, folks? It is April 25th, the time of this video. It is a very beautiful spring day here in Connecticut, which is nice. Makes me want to be outside. I can hear the birds, lots of birds chirping, which is awesome. But who's here? Come on, you know the drill by now. We're on day 6. Would love to know who is watching, who is tuning in, all of that fun stuff. Because it's, you know, I'm essentially here talking to myself is really what it comes down to. So I need some interaction so I know that who's here, so I have an idea of what's going on. Brad, as usual, you were the first one to post. Awesome. I'm happy that you're here. This is fantastic. Who else? Come on, folks. I feel like I can probably guess based on the live attendance that has been happening. I know we've got folks that are catching the replays in either on YouTube or in the Facebook group. So that's awesome. But, you know, let me know who you are, if, you know, what you're working on, all that fun stuff. We're going to start in about 2 minutes or so. Today, we're going to talk about managing the unexpected. And this is one of those areas that is very much often not spoken about or talked about within the kind of publishing space. I think we all know that writing a book, or maybe you don't realize this yet, but writing a book can be a emotionally taxing process. And so today is going to be talking about managing the unexpected, which is really, what is your backup plan when something happens that throws you off course during this process? Because it's important to have that. So that's what we're going to talk about today, which is always, it's one of my favorite things to talk about, actually, because it really is not talked about enough. A lot of times in author communities, there might be people who are kind of commiserating and, you know, saying how, you know, they're stuck or how hard something feels or whatever it might be. But from the publisher side of the table, it's often just completely bypassed or dismissed, of just kind of the emotional roller coaster of which writing a book is. And you don't even have to be writing about anything that's hard, difficult, painful, etc. It still can be an emotional roller coaster, even if you're writing about something that you are a 100% expert in. So this is why I talk about it now, because last week we were talking about, you know, putting our plan in place. And so this is all part of the larger planning process, because ultimately we have to have I don't want to say a plan B, because I just saw a quote the other day that said plan B is a dream killer, but just having some kind of backup situation mapped out. So that way, you know, when you know that something's going to go off course, you just have something there waiting for you so you can feel good about it. All right. Come on, folks. Who do we have here? Brad, I feel like if there is an A+ student award to be given, you would be the recipient of that award, because you are definitely, you're on time. You are always participating, and I very much appreciate that. So today we should probably go close to the 30 minutes. And then, of course, I'll be around for Q&A. We've taken up almost the entire hour on all of the Q&As to date, which is awesome. It doesn't matter if there's 2 people or if there's 20 people. There's still, always things to be talked about from a question standpoint. All right, so I'm going to switch this around and share my screen. I'll speak directly to you, Brad. Can you confirm that you can see my screen? You are a product of your upbringing. You and me both, my friend. You and me both. It is definitely something I've been trying to unravel a bit the older I get. But can you confirm that you can see my screen? I know that there's plenty of you watching. Just there's not a lot of engagement today, which is okay. I don't need it. But Brad, if you can confirm that you can see my screen. Perfect. Thank you. All right. Awesome. All right. So we're just going to do, as we've been, a little bit of a recap. And apologies if you can hear noise in the background. There is a street sweeper that is currently going through my neighborhood, and it's rumbling quite loudly outside. Okay, so just a quick recap. I just want to keep reinforcing these messages over and over and over again because I'm sure you will thank me at a later date as you were in the thick of things, and you're going to come back and you're going to remember, that's right, she warned me of this, or we talked about this. And so we talked about what your book is about, why you're writing your book, and what the purpose of your book was in our very first day. And so that was the anchor point for all of the other things to come up, because now, you're in the, we're on day 6 and you might be in the early stages of writing. However, we are getting to a place where you're going to start to see those emotional highs and lows as you go through the process, and having these answers is going to be helpful for that. Carmen, you are here. Oh, I'm sorry that you fell. That stinks. Well, given the fact that you fell and you're still here, I'm impressed. So you haven't missed anything. We're just doing a quick recap first. And anyone else who wants to chime in that they are here, please let me know who you are. It's really helpful for me to just know who I am speaking to. Day 2, we talked about the impact on the reader. So we kind of switched the lens a little bit. Day 1 was very much a kind of like you in relation to kind of this project, the book, being an author, etc. And then, on day 2, it was very much like, what is the reader? Like, who are we trying to, how are we trying to impact the intended reader? And then day 3, we went into a real deep definition of figuring out who your target reader is. So that was a heavy lift of a day, lots of information. Definitely go back and check it out if you need to rewatch it. Day 5 was very much talking about, how many words we can write in 30 minutes, how to create a writing plan and a timeline. And so this is kind of the crux of what we have been doing so far. So as it stands right now, you should have a solid plan, a good starting point for your plan in place, knowing how many months you want to write, how many days per week you want to be writing, how many hours on those days you're going to be writing, in addition to knowing really clearly who your target reader is, as well as how it's going to impact your reader and all of the other kind of purpose and whys. So that is where we're at as it stands right now in five days in. Now, as we get into day 6, we are going to be talking about the idea of what do we do when something emotionally, it's not even always emotional, but certainly there's a piece of emotions that go into this that have an impact. They have a big impact. And so I want to have a plan in place. So just as I've been saying, kind of just trust the process, because this is one of those big pieces that to me is the reason that your plan will actually work and you will succeed at executing your plan, is what we're going to talk about today. So it's very much it's kind of like affirming of this foundation that we've already set. Definitely get the workbook if you have not done so already. I'm like a broken record on this. Definitely go check it out, because in today's session in particular, there are spots in the workbook to write down the answers to this information, as it has been for the other days of this workshop too. And there's a little bit of a recap of this information. So that is that. Hopefully you have the workbook already. All right, so here's where I'm just going to kind of start with this conversation. When you make the declaration that you are writing a book, and you are super excited. You are telling everybody that you know that you're writing a book. There's two camps of people. There's the person that tells everybody, and then there's the person that works silently and doesn't say a peep to anybody. But when you are kind of out there telling people that you're writing this book, you're working on this book, what can happen, and I have seen, actually, I talked to an author off the ledge just a few weeks ago about this. What can happen is that you end up having people who are not super supportive of this process. So it could just be, it could be a spouse that's not supportive. It could be a family member that's not supportive. It could be someone that works for you, someone you work for. There's a lot of configurations where you might find yourself in a situation where you really thought this person was going to be just as excited as you are about writing this book, and then come to find out that's not the case at all. This does happen. It sucks when it happens. And so what we want to do is make sure that we are surrounding ourselves with people who believe in us. It's really important to be surrounded by people who just genuinely believe in what you're doing. This is a good rule of thumb for life in general, but when it comes to the book process, it's really important, because this isn't an activity that you're going to do in a weekend. I can't say to you today, all right, just go write your book this weekend. It's not really how the creative process works. Of course, there are ways to do that. There are programs out there that say that they can help you write a book in a weekend. But honestly, in my experience, it takes a good dedicated period of time to get a book written. I'm a big believer that you can do it in 6 months. And 6 months is a lot of time to be very strategic and intentional about what you're writing, but also not stretching it too long that it seems like, that it's going to take a year or 12 years or 30 years. Because, we can sit on this for a long time, because sometimes it's hard to prioritize. Because again, it can be hard, right? And especially if you were coming from a place of not being a great writer to start with, it can be even harder. So we want to make sure that we have people around us who are amped, and they are there, and they're there to support you. So there are 3 people, in my estimation, 3 people that you need to have in your corner that are going to be those people that you are surrounding yourself around when it comes to writing your book. It is not to say that these people are not in your life for any other reasons, but there's 3 types of personalities or types of traits that we want to make sure that you really have intentionally decided who they're going to be. So, and this kind of came up just based on, I think I don't know exactly when I started using the 3 of these words in combination, but it was definitely a couple of years ago. And I was kind of saying it more as a joke. And then I realized there's a lot of validity in these kind of archetypes of people, if you will. So the first person, or first group of people, because it might be a number of people that fill these roles. So I'll cover the roles, and then we'll talk about how you can kind of slice it. So you want to have somebody that is a strategist, that is going to help you get this book completed, because you want to make sure that you are very intentional and very strategic about who you are writing for and how you're going to write it for that maximum impact that you're going for. A lot of times this is a big big missing piece. And so what can happen is, if you are writing your book without clarity, or especially around like who you're writing for and your target reader, it can make the editing process significantly harder down the road. So say your book is written 4 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is, but down the road, if you're writing and you're kind of vague and it's just this nebulous beast, and you don't really, you're feeling kind of good about it, but that it still needs a lot of work, somebody who's in a strategic role with you from the beginning can help drive that direction of your content really effectively, rather than having to have an editor come in and have to really rework things. Because when that happens, not only is it going to cost more money, because an editor that's operating at a high level like that, helping you like really reconfigure things and operating in a very strategic way from an editorial standpoint, that's going to be significantly more expensive. But on top of that, it's also going to take significantly longer. So if you could be really intentional around the strategy at the beginning of this, what that's going to do for you is it's going to shorten the timeline and shorten the amount of investment you're going to have to make in the editing process specifically. And then, of course, it's going to be more strategic inherently, like, we're trying to really make sure that it's very clear for how your reader can engage with you, how they're going to work, how they're going to work with you basically beyond the book itself. That's a big piece of it, especially for those writing nonfiction books. Now, the next piece or next person is someone who can operate as a therapist. And so we don't need to have like literal, like I definitely would put myself in a category of being, like a book strategist, marketing, business strategist, all those things. It doesn't have to be a literal person who would define themselves that way. Same thing with therapists. This does not have to be a literal therapist. However, if you have a therapist, I would strongly encourage you to maybe increase a session here or there, specifically for the book writing process. Now, this is incredibly important for those who are writing memoirs. This is really important. However, it can be just as important for those writing a nonfiction book, because what happens in this process is that all of the gremlins come out of all of the directions, and every ounce of insecurity that seems to exist within our beings somehow manifests during the book writing process. It's the things that it's the imposter syndrome, right? It's the I'm not good enough. Who wants to read this book? Someone's already written a book like this. Why would anyone buy this book from me? What makes me different or unique? Like, why does my story matter? It's all of these things that really start to compound. And this is just working on, just a basic nonfiction book. So this is not, you don't even have to be writing about anything heavy or traumatic or anything like that. Just writing a general book can surface all of the things. And so you can have moments that are really, really challenging. I will tell you that when I started going to a therapist, which was about a little over 5 years ago, and I've been going consistently for 5 years, and it has been incredibly valuable, big proponent of it. But I talked with my therapist first, telling her that I was going to start writing my memoir. And so I was very honest with her. And obviously, she's my therapist. So Lord knows, she knew all the details of which I was going to start to expose. And so it was important to just have her on my side to say, like, okay, I'm probably going to need an emergency meeting here or there. Like, can we get an emergency session on the books? Like, is that something that would be possible? And I 100% needed a couple of them. I had a number of moments that were really, really intense and really, really rough to kind of get through in writing my memoir. And so I just had her there ready to roll and good to go. So that's like if you have a formal therapist. This could also be your best friend. This could be your spouse. It could be somebody in your community. It could be, somebody, if you're an active member in some type of kind of like church community or spiritual community. It could be whomever is that person that's kind of leading that community. So again, it doesn't have to be a literal therapist, but the intention is to have somebody there that you can talk to who's going to essentially talk you off the ledge when you're having these really incredibly challenging moments in this process. You just need somebody there that's going to like reel you back in, to make you feel seen and heard and valued, and that your experience, that your experience is your experience, and that you can kind of get through on the other side of it. Again, with memoir writing in particular, this is significantly more important, but nonfiction, there's a strong importance here too. So those are two of the three people. The next person is a cheerleader. So you want somebody that just has your best interest at heart, regardless of what you're doing. So it's somebody that, you say that you're writing a book and they are ecstatic. They are over the moon. They are so excited for you because you are writing a book. They're amped. They're telling other people that you're writing a book. They are proud of you because you're writing a book. And this could be any number of people. This, again, it could be a spouse. It could be a friend. It could be, your closest friend. It could be your sister or brother or sibling or whomever it might be. Just somebody who's there to just pump you up. And it's important to be pumping you up when you're having those moments where you're feeling down or low. So cheerleaders are very important in this process. So if we look at this blend of people and how this all kind of came up, as I was mentioning before, is that a couple of years ago, I think I must have been like in conversation with somebody and just kind of casually threw out that I am the strategist, therapist, and cheerleader for the authors that we work with. It's just who I am. These are just the qualities of who I am and what I bring to the table. And it kind of started off as a joke, saying like, therapist and cheerleader, but it really, there's a lot of validity to it. So when we think about this, what I want you to do is in the workbook, I have columns to put in names of people who are going to fill these roles for you. And what you might find is that you have, you know, 5 people who are your go-to people. You've got a close knit circle of friends. Like you can go to them and confide in them in anything. So you get the therapist column done, checked. You've got plenty of people who operate that. You might even have an actual therapist. Perfect. You might look at the strategy column and say, you know what? I don't know a single person around me who's written a book before, which is very common. And so I don't know who I can go to that's going to help fill that strategy role to really make sure this book is successful. So that column might be blank. Then you might look at the cheerleading column, and the cheerleaders might actually mirror those who are operating kind of that therapist role. So you might have, you know, it might be the same names, it might be different names. You might find that one person covers all 3 of these things. And so there's no real right or wrong way to approach this. And you don't have to have 5 people in these columns. I've definitely worked with a number of folks, and we have our authors do this as part of the beginning part of our process, just in general. So we know how we can really make sure that we're supporting them the best way that we can. So that way, if we look at it and see, okay, you know, this author, you know, in addition to working with us, you already got the strategy box checked. But, you know, maybe they have somebody who's kind of a cheerleader, but they don't really have that place that they can confide in. You know, they don't have that place to go when there's kind of a high or a low in this process. So then we know as a team that we're going to want to make sure that we're actively showing up and fulfilling that role from a therapist standpoint. And again, this is like a therapist, you know, with an asterisk. Obviously, no one on our team is a licensed therapist. It's just more of the kind of concept of what a therapist brings to the table. So what I would love for you to do is, you know, spend a few minutes, make note of who these people are in your life. And if anyone, I know Brad and Carmen, you two in particular are the ones that have been active. I know that there's a number of other people watching. I love that you're watching and that you're here. Would love even more if you were participating, but that's okay. So, you know, Brad or Carmen, would either of you like to just kind of post in the comments, you know, who fills any of these roles in your life in particular? I would love to just kind of see if you have people in place. And you might not right now, and that's okay. So this might require some thinking. I've definitely worked with people on both ends of the spectrum where, you know, somebody can come in and they can fill out all 15 of these boxes. And then there's someone who might have one person that fills in one of those boxes. So wherever you are in this regard is okay. You know, there's no right or wrong. What this is going to help you do, and this is only half of what we're talking about right now. There's another piece to this equation. But basically, what this is going to help you do is it's going to help you know where to go when something happens. And you can tell the people in your life that you have designated them in this particular role, which is fantastic. So you might say, and I would encourage this, you know, go to your social media channel of choice and say, guess what, everyone, I'm writing a book and this is, you know, what it's about. And I need support in this process. So if anyone would like to support me, please, you know, I would be open to that. Or it might just be sending a group text. And you might say to your best friend, you know, as you know, I'm working on this book and I am designating you as my book cheerleader. So I just need you to reassure me and reinforce that I'm making the right decision by doing this. I'm going to need that from time to time. Can you fill that role for me? And they're going to say yes, right? There's no reason they would say no. Jennifer's here too. Okay, awesome, awesome. Okay, so Brad is saying, my husband fills the therapist and cheerleader roles, as do a couple of close friends. I need strategist. Exactly. This is very common of what that kind of comes up like, right? And a lot of times a spouse is, you know, it's interesting because a lot of times spouses are like the number one cheerleader, but you'd be surprised that it does happen where it's not. And family, parents in particular, can definitely be Debbie Downers in this process. I had an author just not that long ago who, and she's probably in her mid 50s, if I had to guess. And her parent, her father, had a really terrible, like said terrible things to her, bottom line, terrible things to her about her book, saying that it was a waste of time, that the idea was stupid. And he like really berated her and made her feel, you know, small and unheard. And so, you know, that will happen. And so we don't want it to happen, but it can and will. And so we want to just kind of find a way to get around that. And so just kind of be mindful of kind of who you're reaching out to. All right, Jennifer is saying, I have a writer's guild, a small, just female writing group, and a writing partner that are all 3 roles. Perfect. Okay, great. Carmen, my best friend is also a widow, and we support one another in our journey of grief. She's also a retired psychiatric nurse, cheerleader, and therapist. Another close friend has written 2 novels. All right, perfect. So see how they all kind of, there's a way to kind of fill these roles within your lives. And it's important to have these, like, just have it mapped out, because just even thinking about this is going to make you more effective as you are going through this process and as it's getting more challenging and as it's getting a little bit more tough. So, this is kind of half of the equation. The other half of this equation is if this, then that. So these are, I don't know, I think it's like a programming term, but like, so if this happens, then that happens. So we want to talk about if this, then that, because when something happens, we want a plan for what we are going to do or how we are going to react to that something. So for example, and this doesn't have to be anything, it's not wrapped in like an emotional thing. This could just be very like logistical things, right? So if I am interrupted by my family, then I will schedule my writing time for a time when they're asleep, or I'm going to leave my house to write. So that's kind of like one example. Or if I'm triggered by something in my past, then I will talk to a friend about it / schedule a time with my therapist. It's important to have these things that you kind of know are going to happen there and ready to go. So in the workbook, there is a whole page to write in if this, then that's. So you might know that you're going to get interrupted by your family. You might know that you're going to be triggered. You might, you could even plan around a vacation. If I plan an unexpected vacation, then I will leave my laptop at home and make up time the following week. Or I will, if I go on an unexpected vacation, then I will bring my laptop with me and I will write at least for 1 hour during that time. Whatever works for you. This is not for me to be forcing a specific way for you to do this. This is very much for you to have in place for things that you kind of know are going to happen. And as things come up that you weren't expecting to happen, because this whole session is called Managing the Unexpected, if that happens, then what you can do is just document it. So, maybe, I'm not even sure what a good example is, but, maybe this sounds ridiculous, but like the changing of the seasons, right? So like we're in spring, we'll be changing to summer soon. If you know that you struggle with those seasonal transitions for any reason, write it in here, right? Like just say, all right, if I struggle with the seasonal transition to summer, then what are you going to do? Like, what is the thing? Like, I know for me personally, my world orbits around the sun, as my mental health. I'll phrase it that way. My mental health is very much based on sunlight. And so for me, if I had something happen where I'm like, okay, if it is a beautiful sunny day that I was planning on writing and I don't want to write now, then I'm going to schedule time to write early in the morning before, while it's still dark, or late at night while it's still dark. Completely random example that I just pulled out of my head. That might be relevant for you. So just kind of brainstorm and think, what are going to be those best things for you to have down, so that way you can flip to your workbook and you can be like, okay, this is what I needed to know. This is this is my plan. This isn't the end of the world, because that's kind of where we're at, is more so that we just want to make sure that your plan doesn't get thwarted, because we did spend time on Thursday and Friday last week where we were talking through, what does this plan look like? We just want to make sure that your plan stays and has an effectiveness to it. And by having both the kind of the emotional side of this covered and now this like logistical, logical side covered, it just helps your plan stay intact significantly better. So, do we have any questions? What are we thinking? Who, what, where, when, why, or how? Anybody have questions? I know that We're not super chatty today, but I know Carmen, Brad, Jennifer, you're here and engaging. Is anything coming up for you? I have definitely had some people where this can bring up some emotions because you realize maybe how unsupported you might be. I don't necessarily think that that's at least the three of you who are engaging, and I can see your comments. You're probably okay, but might be somebody here watching because the numbers, like I see that you're here. You might be kind of looking at this and thinking, like, I don't know that I have, people in this, so it makes me feel like I don't know. I feel a little bit bad because I just don't have that support system that I was hoping I would have. And that's just something to be mindful of. That's all, right? So you can always acquire the support system when you know what support system you need. Carmen, if I fall off the loft stairs and have to go to the doctor to get checked out and messes up my writing day, then I will rest and read for the day and pick up writing tomorrow. That is a perfect example, Carmen. That is a perfect example. Gary, I'm thinking I just need to get going. Yep. Brad, I'm thinking this isn't going to be as logistically challenging as I thought. You're making this easy, Jen. That is the goal. I think I said that on day one of this workshop. The goal is to make this easy to do because it doesn't have to be complicated. But we as people like to make things super complicated. And this industry likes to make this incredibly complicated because when it's complicated, you need to hire more people and get more support and more help, which makes people money. I like this to be as simple as possible, be strategic at the same time, and really just get this information out there. So that way you can be off to the races, getting your writing done, circle back around if you want to have a publishing conversation. You can certainly work with us from a writing standpoint if anyone is struggling and trying to figure out like how they're actually going to get the writing done. Because it's one thing to kind of conceptually be like, okay, it's easy, it's attainable, or I shouldn't say easy, it's simple to execute, it's attainable, I can do this. But then, this process, there's a lot of, it's almost like quicksand where you're thinking you're good, but you're like slowly sinking, and then you're like really in it and can't figure out how to climb back out. That tends to happen with a lot of folks. But yeah, so there's a lot of ways to get support if you're looking for support, but on the surface, conceptually, this doesn't have to be that complicated. Jennifer, I find that I have to write every day. It doesn't have to be long, but it needs to be consistent. When I'm stuck, I set a timer for 30 minutes and do flow writing, or I blog to prime the pump. That's perfect. That's perfect. And what you're saying, flow writing, is I say free writing, and that's what we talked about on Thursday last week. So yeah, that's perfect. I find consistency is really important because it just forces you to take some kind of action, even if it is, in your case, you're setting a timer for 30 minutes, which is great. For somebody else, it might be, I just need to do 5 minutes. And there's something really, actually, we just had a conversation about this in one of our Getting Started for Authors groups, where we were talking about how can we kind of gamify the situation. And so is it, that you want to have a writing streak? And it doesn't matter, you could have a writing streak of writing for 2 hours a day for a writing streak. And then it could be, that you have a day that you only write for 5 minutes because you don't want to lose your streak. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And getting into a streak can really be helpful. Right now, I am using Duolingo as an example, and I am on a 44-day streak. I will do anything to make sure that I get my time in on Duolingo to not ruin my streak. So I'm at 44 days, and I will be devastated if for some reason I missed my day. And so that is forcing me to be practicing learning a new language every single day. Some days I spend like a solid hour and am really immersed in it and trying to like really understand. And then other days I'm like, oh shit, I have a half an hour before midnight. I need to get something in here. I need to do a single lesson, which can be like 5 or 10 minutes, just to make sure I don't lose my streak. Same thing with writing, right? Like, just because even in that 5-minute session, who knows what might come up? It might be something really good that just kind of sets the stage for something that you're going to write later. Like, Jennifer, you're saying, blogging to like prime the pump. So that 5 minutes, because you're like, I don't want to lose my streak, that 5 minutes might be something that just primes the pump for something that you're going to write the next day. There's something really rewarding about having streaks. I have a streak right now. I'm an exercise streak using an app called Conquer. And it's awesome. And it doesn't matter what type of exercise, but yeah, like I rode 9 miles on my bike on Saturday. And then yesterday I could barely walk. And so I did very minimal, but I still have my streak going. Like I walked for like a mile. Perfect. I didn't lose the streak. That's all that matters. I didn't lose the streak. Carmen, I'm a bit apprehensive asking friends to be therapists, strategists, cheerleaders, because I've told people in the past I'm writing a book but never finish it. Will they think I'll just quit again? Oh, that's such a good question, Carmen. Oh, that's such a good question. This is something that a lot of people struggle with, where you have been saying for a long time that you're working on something and it doesn't happen. I feel like, at least in my experience, because obviously I work with authors every day, I'm an author myself, and a lot of friends I have are also authors. In my experience, I think general people who aren't writing a book, I think they understand why, maybe not the details of why, but I think there's some grace and acceptance of when someone says that they're writing a book and it hasn't happened yet. Because I think I think everybody realizes that writing a book is a hard process, right? I'm trying to make the process simplified, but there's still a lot of hours and a lot of work that you have to do independently to get this done. So I would go back to those people and I would say, I know, and I would just be honest, say, like, I know I have been telling you for X amount of time that I'm writing this book and I haven't finished it yet. But what I'm realizing is what would be really good for me is if I had someone who I could have in like a cheerleading type of role for this. Is that something you can do for me? I need your support and your cheerleading to help me stay on track and to keep me moving forward. So that way I can actually get this finished. I think that's the best way to approach it, is just being honest. Jennifer, it stays fresh in my head when I write daily. In the morning is best. If I dictate, I'll dictate if I only have a minute. Otherwise, it gets dull. Yeah, perfect. Just throw dictation into the mix. Whatever it takes to just be doing something toward your book. It doesn't have to be this big, like, I'm sitting at my desk with perfect ambiance and I'm just writing for 3 hours, or I'm writing for an entire day. If that doesn't work, it doesn't work. We just want to keep the streak going. Jennifer, Duolingo is a language learning program. So you can pick whatever language you're learning, and they make it in a simplified way. Like, I use the app. I'm learning Ukrainian. And so they have the app that you can just learn whatever language that you're trying to learn. And they make it kind of simple. They kind of gamify it a little bit so it doesn't feel so difficult. I'm using that program in addition to a bunch of other resources to learn the language. But for me, it's more about the writing. It's about the streak. I don't want to lose the streak. Carmen. Actually, a lot of it is probably in my own head, beating myself up. When I have written something, they are happy and proud of me. See? And good advice, to be honest with them. They're good friends after all and should understand. Absolutely. And especially somebody who hasn't written a book before, they tend to have a lot of compassion for people who haven't yet finished writing their book, because they themselves in their mind are like, I could never do this. I could never, I can't even imagine trying to write a book. So they can kind of put themselves in your shoes and think of like, wow, this could be really overwhelming. So if you're not moving at the pace that you're hoping to, that's okay. That's totally okay. All right, I'm going to share a little bit more information about the Getting Started for Authors program that is starting in less than a month. And so I'm going to share just for a couple minutes, and then we'll get back over to more Q&A. So think of your questions now, because again, like, these are good questions, especially kind of those that are in the emotional kind of range here. Like, how do I find the right support systems? So we can certainly, or, if you have questions unrelated to that, you can ask those too. All right. So this is our continued sneak peek. So remember, this is starting soon. We haven't promoted it or advertised it to really to anybody yet. Well, other than, like, we run this program a couple times a year, but we have spots for 6 people. It's just a 6-person program because we like it to be very intimate, very customized. We want to make sure that people are getting the support and resources that they need. And so we have learned that if we even try to do 7 people, it gets too much. We tried 8 one time and it was way too many. So 6 is the magic number for us. So just a quick reminder, we have the weekly writing strategy sessions. We have the marketing and business strategy sessions, and marketing and business. So if someone's watching this and you don't have a business, we mean like the business of the book. Like, what is the book going to kind of do for you and help support other areas of your life. And so we want to make sure that the book is successful. And that's very much what the strategy is wrapped around. We have the peer writing review and critiques, which can be very valuable to just validate that you are on the right track with something, or to acknowledge that you're not on the right track and correct course early. Because what that's going to do is it's going to end up saving you a significant amount of time and money down the road, because now you don't have to pay as many editors to be focused on to be fixing the things that could have been course corrected earlier on. And by the time you get to the editing phase, you're exhausted by just this process. And so having to go back and do major rewrites it can feel really deflating and exhausting. And I have personally been there with one of my earlier books. And it's just better to kind of start things right. It's easier that way. And then the ongoing support and access to my team, who are amazing people, access to me. I have office hours that are available twice a month where I am there answering all of the questions, the writing questions, marketing strategy, business strategy, all of the things. And it's only available to people who work with PYP. So it's not it's not something you can just kind of like pay your way into the meeting. It's like only for people working with us, which is great. I do have, and reminder, 6 spots only. So if you're interested, I'll give you my contact information again at the end of these slides. But the early bird bonuses is what I wanted to tell you about today. And I believe I'll have a couple more tomorrow. I have not put them on a slide yet, but I will do that later today. But we have a thing called the editor's eye. And what the editor's eye is, and we charge $750 for this service. And what it is it's basically what it sounds like. It's an editor's eye. So you submit a number of pages to us, and one of our editors reviews it in detail and provides you with a summary report of what you're doing well, where you might want to improve, and just kind of general insights that they might have seen. And so it could be something that you are writing about, a specific topic, but based on what you submitted, that topic is actually very unclear. And so the editor is going to be providing that feedback to say, all right, in this section, in the introduction, you kind of mentioned this and this, but you never actually finish that thought. You don't close the loop here. And so what this does is it just makes this process that much easier. So in addition, in the 6 months that we have together, there's the value of just getting this kind of ongoing feedback and support around the writing and the strategy. But then toward the end of the process, which is usually when we tell people to take advantage of this, is like when we're about to not be working together. So at the end of those 6 months, have the editor kind of come in and just confirm, so you could do it at the end where you're having an editor confirm that you did indeed execute it properly and see what other insights that are valuable that they might have. Or you can have them do it in the earlier part of the process where you don't have a lot written yet and you really want that editor's lens. So I have mine's like the business and the marketing strategy lens. Of course, I can talk about publishing and writing, but I have people on my team that are the publishing experts and the writing experts. But even they are not an editor. And so an editor's eye is so incredibly valuable. I cannot emphasize enough how important editors are to this overall process. They're just significant. They're a huge piece of this process. And so I value them. And this is something that we throw in here because it really, and this is just the early bird bonus. So I'll give you the date. I think it's like next Wednesday to enroll by. You can get access to these early bird bonuses. We also have some bonus training videos. We are in the middle of a rebrand. So if you kind of stumble across like an old looking logo that does not look anything like this current one, we're in the middle. This rebrand is going to take us forever to complete. But what's good about it is that some of these bonus videos, I'm in the process of updating and recreating. So there's 3 in particular that I'm adding as bonuses in this program, specifically because they're more of kind of the marketing side. So this one is about fundraising to support your book. So I did an interview with a fundraising expert specifically, and she and I go into real deep detail on what is the best way to fundraise to support and promote your book. Because that's one of these tricky parts where you have this vision, but you might not have the proper resources in order to actually get it done in a quality way that's going to really reflect who you are, what you stand for, what your topic is about. And so fundraising for a book is a very common thing. You'll see them on Kickstarter, GoFundMe. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but there's even more strategic and intentional ways to do it that takes less people with better results. So that's kind of part of this as one of these bonus videos. And then PR strategy, right? So public relations is incredibly important. And this is also a conversation that I had with a PR expert. And then we go into real deep detail on what the right PR strategy might look like for your book. So sometimes, like, PR people are expensive. I will just tell you that. That is a big nut to crack for a good PR firm. So a good PR firm is going to cost $10,000 or $15,000 monthly. And a lot of them charge like a 6-month retainer. This is not that conversation. This is a conversation about how to leverage the people that you have, the people that you might know, people that other people might know, that does not require you to make an investment of that magnitude. We work with a lot of authors, and we've only had a couple. It's probably maybe 10% of our author base will have will not that they don't have it, but they'll be willing to make that large kind of a PR investment. Everybody else, we're coming up with really creative and interesting strategies that are going to work to get the eyes on it that you want to have on it, but at the same time, not going to break your bank or cost you anything at all. So there's a lot of it kind of wrapped in again, kind of the PR side of things, right? So we have the writing process, we have the publishing process, and then we have the promotion process. Those are all 3 huge components to getting this done. So it's like a kind of a complete package, because you could write the best book in the world, but if you don't have a way to get it in front of the right people, which is going back to the target readers and being strategic, then you're really you can be really missing the mark, unfortunately. And that's the last thing that we want to have happen. And then the other bonus video, and there's likely to be more. These are 3 in particular that are very specifically included. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of other bonus videos as we're rebranding and I'm recording new materials. But the creating your personal brand it's really important to have an author brand. But it's not just an author brand. It's what your professional it's your professional brand, your personal brand, your author brand. There's all kind of different aspects of who you are and how you're showing up in the world, and having this be a cohesive way that it's put together can be a huge value add for this book and for the success of the book. Because again, we can't just write a book and just let it sit there. And this is why we have such a focus on marketing and strategy from the writing all the way through the launch day, is because if it's not strategically created, the last thing that you want is to have a box of books sitting in your office, your garage, in your driveway that are just sitting there collecting dust because you did not know how to effectively get it into the hands of the right people. There's a lot of ways to do it. And there's a lot of, again, how I've made this whole process simple. There's also a simplicity to doing this too. There's, you can go out and spend tens of thousands of dollars. You can also bootstrap it. And either way that you do it, it can be incredibly effective. Okay. And so that's at least today's early bird bonuses. I'll share some more tomorrow. But enrollment by the 4th. So I believe that's next Wednesday. I think. I don't even know what date. Today's the 25th. Yeah, sometime next week. And so that's enrollment. And actually I'll put up on the screen in a minute how to get on my calendar. So if for some reason when we're trying to schedule time and we can't meet before the 4th because of one of our schedules, if we have something on the calendar by the 4th, we're fine. So I'll still honor those bonuses even if we can't talk until days after that. Investment, just so you all know. So we used to run this as a 3-month program and it cost $2,500. We are now doing it as a 6-month program and it's $29.97. So it's really kind of getting 3 additional months for free. And we really revamped this program in the beginning of 2021. And it is so much more effective because we were doing it in 3 months. And we've learned that 3 months is not enough time for people to get a book, really get a solid book written. So we extended it to 6 months, and it has been significantly more successful for folks. And so it's really kind of like, we obviously could have, doubled the price and made it, 5,000 or 6,000 or something like that. But it didn't seem right. So that is how we do it. We do it with, monthly payments, if that's preferred, whatever you might, whatever works for you. And so if you have questions, please send me an email. If you want to schedule time with me, go right to meetwithjen.com. And that's what I'm saying. So even if we can't, get on a call until after May 4th, I will still honor the early bird bonuses, because I am going to have other bonuses as well. All right, so let's get into some questions. I'm going to throw this up on the screen again. So if you want to have a private session with me around book strategy, we can talk about anything. Please, make a tax-deductible donation to this Ukrainian nonprofit, and just send me a screenshot saying, hey, I made a donation. Let's get a call on the calendar. Done and done. And we can have a private strategy session, just the two of us. And so the link is right there. It's called maidanunited.org/donate. It can be in any amount. And a number of you have taken advantage of this. And it makes me really happy, because I'm seeing firsthand when the organization gets the donation, how happy they are. And then you and I get to have a private conversation, and it's kind of a win-win. All right, now we're back. Questions. All right, let's see. What did I miss in the comments? Good advice. Be honest with them. They're good friends after. Okay, said that one. Jennifer and Carmen, cheerleaders cheer whether the team is losing or winning. Oh, that's such a great way of phrasing it, Jennifer. That's like a perfect way to phrase it, right? Like, that's the point of a cheerleader, just to have somebody there around you that's going to like lift you up when you are having those moments where you are feeling down and you really just need to be lifted up. I was having a moment on Saturday, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for a bike ride. I think that will make me feel better. And then I ended up being out for 9 miles, but I had sent a text to a friend when I kind of hit my halfway point, and I just had something, how moody I was. And she was like, do you want to talk? And I was like, you know what? That would be great. And so I ended up talking to her while I was riding the last 2 miles back to my car. And it was exactly what I needed. Like, she was 100% my cheerleader in that moment. Like, I just needed somebody to snap me out of the funk that I felt like I was in. And it worked. And so that has nothing to do with books, nothing to do with writing. So it's not this idea of like, oh, if this happens. No, it's not an if. This is 100% a when this is going to happen. I do not know a single author who has made it from first word to last word without some type of emotional situation, some type of, I want to say a breakdown, because that sounds a little bit more extreme than I intended, but it kind of is, right? Like, we have these moments. For me, in my memoir, there are 3 spots in the book, 3, and they're very intense spots, which is why I probably cry every time. But I was a wreck every time I tried to get these 3 stories on paper, every single time. And then I'd be like, I'm done with this. And I would just shut my laptop and walk away. And then I would come back to the next day, same damn thing would happen. It was just this like loop where, and then finally I kind of just left them, and I wrote all of the other things around it and just put like a placeholder. I highlighted in a yellow of like, come back later when you're like in a better mental health mood. And so, and I would work it through with my therapist to just be like, listen, I'm really struggling, and I have to figure out how the hell to get this on paper, because I don't know how to do it otherwise. And I would even be crying talking to her about it. Like, it was such an emotional wreck. And like a lot of the story, like in my memoir, there's a lot that's not great, but it was these just 3 specific spots that just I could not get through. And so it was having the right friends and having the therapist and just being able to, to just kind of like cry and let it out. And I'm not someone who cries often. So for me, this was a whole like uncharted territory. But I got through it, and it's because I had the right people around me, truly. And again, everything that I'm teaching is because I've done it myself. And that's why, and I know that it works for me personally. And then now, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of authors at this point. So I also know that it works, for other people too. But a lot of this has been trial and error on my own part. And when I wrote my first book, I wrote it in 2012, published it in 2013, I did not have any of this figured out. None of it. Zero. I did everything wrong, if I'm being honest. In some of our training materials, I actually use my older books as examples of what not to do, because I really botched it a number of times. And so, it's just trial and error. And one of the things I really felt like I was missing back early on was having that right support system in place. I really didn't. I feel like in my first book I did not have the right support system in place. And I could feel like I obviously didn't have that language for it then. I just felt like something was missing. And so when I did the second book, I was more intentional about talking to more people about it and enlisting people in being that kind of support system for me. And then when I did the third and the fourth and the fifth and the sixth, like it just kept getting easier. So I didn't really leverage and use my therapist until my sixth book, which was my memoir, or is my memoir. So it took me 6 books to figure out, oh, wow, I should probably engage my therapist in this discussion somehow. So, lesson learned. And now I can shortcut that for you. You don't have to write 6 books to have the same epiphanies or revelations. And that's my goal, is to just kind of shortcut this learning curve, because it's a steep learning curve in a lot of ways. Not just the writing, but the publishing is a whole other can of worms of steepness in terms of the learning curve. Which tomorrow we are going to talk about publishing. So that's going to be tomorrow's conversation. It's just kind of like a high level, like, what do you need to know? Just bare bones. What do we need to know when it comes to the publishing process? And then, the end of the conversation tomorrow, the goal is to just, you have an idea of how you might get this done down the road. There's no commitment to any specific direction for anything. It's just more of like, hey, here's your options. This is what to consider. Now you have this information that's kind of front and center. So you don't have to be worrying about, how do I figure out what publishing path I'm going to go down? You don't have to worry. You don't have to wait until you're done writing to figure that out. Ideally, you should know that as you're starting this process, because then you'll be able to set up a lot of different things in place that are going to be really effective from a strategic standpoint, especially marketing standpoint, when you kind of know what direction you're eventually going to go in. It can also be more cost effective because you know what direction you're going to go in. Because what I have seen happen with a lot of folks is that they're like, all right, I finished writing my manuscript. This is amazing. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh crap, like now what do I do? Like, I didn't think about what the next step in this process was. And so it can just be a relief to kind of know what the next step in the process is once you have your manuscript written. So that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. And I have an entire webinar on this topic. So tomorrow, if you want more information, I have an entire webinar that I did for the nonfiction writers conference last year, which was an incredible conference, for the record. Actually, I think it's happening. I think it's going on this week or next week. I think it's actually next week. Yeah, incredible conference, but I have a whole webinar for it. And so if you want more information, I've got plenty of it to provide. But we're going to get into just high level and a little bit of nuts and bolts tomorrow. Any questions? What are we thinking? I know that you're all still hanging out because I can see that the number has not moved, which is great. I appreciate it. So what other questions might you have? I know we only have, a couple minutes here, but there's got to be something on your mind. Trying to get like a full kind of comprehensive feel to all of this, right? So we want to make sure that the plan is fully complete and comprehensive, which is why tomorrow talking about publishing just helps really tighten up the plan even further. All right, my chattier ones, Carmen, Brad, Jennifer, anybody have questions? Tomorrow we'll have plenty of time for questions. Wednesday we'll have plenty of time for questions. So you have, access to me to answer anything that's on your mind for the next couple of days still. So I would love for you to take advantage of it. Anything book related, I'm in. I was actually in an Irish bar on Saturday with a couple of friends, and the book, it was a book. The receipt came out in a book, and one of them looked at me and they were like, does this hurt your heart by seeing how many people have written inside this book? And it was like some reproduction of a Yeats poem, a book of poems. And I was like, yes, actually it does. I don't like writing in books. And so, but it was kind of a fun way to deliver a receipt for somebody instead of using those credit card plastic things. It's like, oh, that's fun. But then, people just write in it. And then, of course, another friend across from me decided to start drawing some kind of picture in it. So clearly my heart being broken did not impact their ability to deface the book in front of us. Just a random little tidbit. because we're not overly chatty today, which is cool. It's a Monday, and I know a number of you, actually, I think most of you are on the West Coast, so it's still a little bit early for a Monday. I get it. I get it. But hopefully, when we're back tomorrow, you'll have more questions, and we can talk about the publishing process. Carmen, this has been a very helpful today and each day. I've not heard the therapist, strategist, cheerleader teaching before. I can see a therapist will definitely help when getting ready to write my memoir. Yeah, I promise it will help because it's going to be it's going to be an emotional roller coaster. Again, memoirs more so than nonfiction, but it's a lot, and so just being prepared can really be a huge thing. So I'm happy that this has been helpful. All right. With that being said, I'm going to end us for today. So tomorrow we're going to talk about high level publishing, what that looks like. And then on Wednesday, we're going to wrap everything back together. And Wednesday will be plenty of time for Q&A as well as tomorrow. And then if you want to come on as a success story, if you will, just let me know. And I would love to have you kind of come on camera with me on Wednesday, and people can see your face, they can hear your voice, they can see what you're writing about. You don't have to. I might not have anybody who wants to take advantage of this, but if you're interested, just shoot me a note and we can. I'll send you the link and we can make that happen. All right, that's it. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I will see you all tomorrow, and I'm wishing you a beautiful